The Art of the Pivot is brought to you by Signavio.
Hello and welcome to another Art of the Pivot conversation. My name is Mark Jeffries and today we are joined by Bill Wagner, CEO of LogMeIn, one of the world's largest software as a service companies. You know, LogMeIn was a pioneer in the remote access to work movement with its portfolio of software and security products. Today, the company earns over $1 billion in annual revenue and employs 4,000 people in 20 countries. Bill came to LogMeIn in 2013 as the company's first COO and was elevated to the role of CEO just 2 years later. And prior to LogMeIn, Bill was the COO at Vocus, the CMO at FiberLink, and a senior marketing leader at AT&T. Bill, welcome. Where do we find you today?
Mark, thank you for the welcome. I'm so glad to be with you, and I am in just outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
Me too. I'm round the corner. We could have literally shouted out of our windows, probably. So, Bill, for those who don't know, tell us a bit more about LogMeIn and also your customers, and what's your big mission at the company?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So LogMeIn is, and you did a nice job of teeing us up. We really do three things. We help companies connect, secure, and support their employees and partners around the world. So as you said, it began with remote access, but now it's remote support, it's online meetings, it's online events. And really our purpose is to unlock the potential of the modern remote workforce. And of course, that is taking on a completely new meaning over the last year or so. And we've been quite busy evolving and ramping, and it's been a really exciting time for us as companies, not just ours, but all types of companies are really transitioning to this next normal.
You know, that's the name of our broadcast here, The Art of the Pivot. Everyone's had to pivot. We all were faced with this sudden new reality. You guys must have been sat there going, wait, this is what we're actually built for.
What was really interesting is, as a CEO, I got a really interesting perspective because of what LogMeIn does. So not like most leaders around the world, we were dealing with business continuity issues last March. How do we adapt? How do we transition our workforce to remote? How do we make sure that they're safe? But I also, because of what we do, I had a front row seat to watch how other organizations were making that change. Organizations that did a really seamless job transitioning to remote work. Technology companies were probably the best example of that. But then we also had municipalities, healthcare providers that were really struggling with that transformation and that transition to remote work. So that was something I got to see it from both sides, both as a practitioner, but also as a partner to those companies. And obviously we were in a unique position to try to help them.
Well, of course you were. And I know you had a huge increase in usage overnight, something like 400%. But I'm interested to pick you up on something you just said. What was the discernible difference between those who just got it right, the transformation, the instant transformation, and those who really struggled? Is it something we can always predict, or were you surprised?
Well, I think it's, of course, the rear view mirror tells all. And it's, I think, obvious to all of us, certain industries lend themselves to remote work for sure. And just as simple as companies that had already enabled their employees to have laptop computers versus state, local government, municipalities that did not and relied on people being in the office, desktop computers, and did not have any remote work policies already in place. That was probably the first demarcation point that I saw. I would say the second was operationally, were they comfortable with, were they set up to have a secure operations in a remote setting? So did they already have some of those technology solutions already in place? And then the third thing I would say was leadership and what was the mindset of leadership? Were they ready to trust their employees working remotely, or was it a brand new thing that they had to overcome some of the myths that have existed around remote work for many years?
So true. And I have a funny feeling that some of them probably thought, well, I don't trust it yet. we'll wait a couple of months and we'll all get back in the office. And when it became clear that no one was going back, not for a long time, then really we had no choice but to trust. I'm guessing your own workforce went through this transformation really easily. I mean, you were set, you were ready, right?
Yeah, well, I would say that's from a business continuity perspective, and lots of lessons from business continuity. I would say we were ready, and we made that transition pretty seamlessly. I think what was a surprise and what was a lesson, an opportunity for us to learn, was really how much we had to invest in employee well-being during this time period. And I think something that all leaders think about, that there are people in their organization, but it was something we really had to focus on over the last year. And I think we had to get better as a company because we were dealing with, the stress of some employees dealing with health issues, mental health issues, everything from loneliness to just lack of social interaction and the added stress that the pandemic brought. So, in some ways, for us especially, I would say that the work part of it was the easy part. It was the social connection of the company where we really had to over-index on.
It's true, isn't it? We all, I say we all, many organizations who run large teams had to face up to this reality really quickly. When we're in person, it's so easy to go, hey, how's it going? How was your weekend? It just doesn't happen in the virtual world. Did you or the team come up with anything particularly cool over the year? Something that you might think to yourself, maybe we'll keep doing that.
We did quite a few things, and I don't deserve any of the credit. My team did all the work, but one of the things that we did pretty early days, Mark, was we identified our employees by personas. And this was really interesting. We didn't just paint our employees with one broad brush of saying everyone's in the same situation working from home. We actually came up with 6 personas and then developed certain benefits around those personas. So for instance, a new hire, someone working as a new hire coming into the company for the first time, someone working remotely by themselves, someone working remotely but with another adult, either a spouse or potentially a roommate, people working with young children, people working with school-age children, and then our 6th was people who were caregivers, people who were providing care to someone who was dealing with a health issue. And that really elevated our thinking and developing programs, support programs, and benefits, literally changing our benefits programs to support each of those different personas. I think that was transformational in the way that we helped support our employees over the last 18 months. And it's something that will continue.
That is fascinating. I haven't heard it couched in such a way, thinking about your team as personas, but that's probably the most efficient way to handle it because we all fall into one category or another. Very smart approach indeed. And as we hopefully, fingers crossed, come to the end of the pandemic, do you look at everything that's been learned over the last year and do you think to yourself, we can now cherry pick what really worked and keep it up? Or do you feel that we all just need to get back to the office and return to where we were?
No, we've declared that we are moving to a remote-centric environment. And when we surveyed our customers over the course of the past year, a couple of lessons learned. One is you have to separate remote work from the pandemic. Often over the last year, leaders conflated those two things. And during the pandemic, we were dealing with school closures and lack of daycare and other things that were really changing the way and impacting our daily lives. But when we separate that and we ask our employees, okay, in a more normal situation where schools are in session, where you have health daycare, for instance, for young kids, do you feel comfortable working from home? What's your preference? Actually, only 3% of our employees said that they wanted to be in the office full time. And we just published a study with Forrester Research, and it was really compelling. One data point was that 83% of those surveyed, this is hundreds of people surveyed, said that they would certainly prefer to work for a company who provided remote working flexibility. And they're more likely to stay at that company if they provide that kind of flexibility. So we took a lot of data sources, our own employees, what other companies were doing. Obviously, our technology enables it, Mark. So you would expect, I think, that we're on maybe the front edge of this movement. And we've moved to a remote-centric environment, which is we will open our offices back up, and we're hopefully looking to do that soon. But we expect most employees will be in the office 1 to 2 days a week, not coming in the office 5 days a week, sitting at a desk to do work. And we think that hybrid approach gives us the best long-term benefits.
And you feel very strongly about this, don't you? Remote work is more than just a virtual meeting and getting in front of the camera and chatting for a while.
It is. I mean, we talked a little bit about the policies of what has to happen and how companies have to care for their employees. The technology is just one aspect. And again, that same research we did with Forrester said, technology is the first of kind of 4 pillars that you have to think about. Culture is a really important part. Not every company has the culture that supports remote work, and it's a culture that is really based on trust and not control. That's really important shift for a lot of companies, and so that's a second element is making that shift culturally, and then do you have the right structure, management structure, and then do you have the right policies? Those are the 4 things: technology, culture, structure, and policies that I think it takes to be successful. And of course, we're going to learn, Mark. We're going to learn like everybody else. We're going to make mistakes and we're going to learn along the way.
And I think what's going to be fascinating is how much people choose to come into the office, because now it's a choice rather than basically mandatory. We're going to see patterns, and you and I both live in the Boston area. You see Seaport, how they've built all those new office buildings. I worry about how many of them are just going to be empty. But there's a part of me that thinks that we're such social animals that we're going to want to have those opportunities to get together, to connect, to be face to face more often than we might imagine now.
Yeah, somebody said to me during this, and this has lived with me. This is probably now almost 8 months ago. I heard this phrase. Somebody said, I'm very comfortable being able to do my work. I miss the social aspects. And what it clicked in my mind is that the office isn't necessarily where you'll go to get your work done. It's where you'll go to make those social connections you were just talking about. So I do think offices play an important role. And I don't think a fully remote, certainly for us, a fully remote environment is not what we're envisioning. It is a hybrid approach. But the benefits are also beyond. I mean, we focus mainly on productivity and employee well-being here today. But keep in mind, I think that there are significant impact on sustainability. I think there's a significant impact on the ability to acquire talent. So for us as a Boston-based company, for instance, having a remote-centric environment allows us now to reach into talent pools that are not just located in the Boston area. And that opens up, we can now go get the best talent as opposed to hiring the best talent in Boston. And that's really exciting for us.
It's bizarre, isn't it? This entire experience with all of the downsides, all of the negatives. There have been these incredibly liberating moments where people think, I can actually work from the Berkshires or the Bahamas. I could still do what I've always done, but in a place that makes me feel super happy and comfortable. Fascinating. My goodness, if Steve Carell made The Office again, it'd be a very different TV show, I bet. Let's talk about innovation. Innovation is something that drives organizations, especially software as a service organizations like yours. Did you see an uptick in productivity around innovation, around creativity? How easy was that to handle? A lot of people said the pandemic was the ultimate catalyst and moved things on quickly. Did you find that?
I think it was mixed, certainly at first. I mean, you had the whole people getting used to working remotely aspect of it. So the first couple of months, people were just making that adjustment. And I think once we got past that, people understood how to work remotely. I do think at the end of the day, this is a benefit towards innovation, certainly in our industry, because think about this. We have millions of people, tens of millions of people for the first time working remotely. So think about a company like LogMeIn, who really focuses on securing those environments and helping people connect and supporting those employees. I mean, it's talk about user testing. I mean, we're getting more feedback, pressure testing what we know and how our technology works. And
Right.
it's great to see employees using it for the first time because it just gives us a fresh perspective on, well, maybe this is too hard to use, or wow, there's a different use case that we didn't think of before. So I do think it's upping the bar in terms of innovation. And I think in terms of remote work, I think we're going to see a sea change over the next several years.
Just listening to your last answer, I'm imagining that you are now the recipients of a tsunami of data, new data giving you new insight into how people behave and what they do, which is fascinating, especially around security. You mentioned security. I know that the LogMeIn promise is, quote, most reliable remote access. What does it take to live up to that kind of promise? Have you been able to keep it stable as people work away from the office? Or is it actually the reverse? And in fact, it's easier because people aren't bringing memory cards and sticks into the main office and plugging them in.
I don't think it's easier. I think the threat environment has actually been more dispersed. When people were working in the office, primarily in the office, and this is an old story, this has been changing over the years, but certainly acutely changed now, where now that your threat environment is people's homes and people's home devices, personal devices. So it's actually more challenging. And of course, we've seen an increase in bad actors and their activity over the last year. So I would say no, it's not. The security environment has not gotten any better. I think for us,
right,
it is a never-ending battle and mission to make sure that we're secure, all the way from how we develop our software to threat assessment to proactive offensive security, which is where we kind of attack ourselves. And we do all those things. I think most software companies do those. Those are mainly best practices. But I meet with my security team frequently, and you will never arrive when it comes to security, Mark. I know you know that. It is a journey. Yeah. It is a journey that's never ending.
Are we there yet? Doesn't apply. But it is. And I guess that's the discipline, isn't it? It's knowing that this journey never ends, and how do we keep up to speed? Because it seems to be a race. It's hard, but you guys do incredibly well. And also, on top of everything else, if my information is right, you did a major migration, a system migration from Oracle to AWS. It worked. A lot of businesses are facing decisions like that, one way or the other, in reverse. What did you learn from the experience? Anything you could share?
Yeah, so as if we didn't have enough going on last year, and by the way, we also transitioned from a publicly traded company to a privately owned company. So that was also another transition on top of all these things we're talking about. And in particular, we didn't just choose any database. We probably chose our highest throughput database in our entire business. And we have close to 30 million users worldwide, about 2 million paying customers, and the volume of transactions that goes through our systems is pretty incredible. So, and we were really looking for, I think what a lot of leaders are looking for today, Mark, is greater flexibility, greater scalability, and geodiversity, which has become increasingly important. So being able to have your data geo-separate your compute. Yeah. That was really important for us. And the only way we could do that was to move to the cloud. And yeah, it was not for the faint of heart. Our team did an amazing job. It comes down to, frankly, change management best practices. And I've learned that the hard way over the years. I know that I've made mistakes and think change management, schmange management. Well, let's just go ahead and get it done. And come on, let's just drive and power. But it's all about the planning. It's all about the upfront effort that you put into it. And we're really pleased with the outcome, but again, I think we've made mistakes. I know I've made mistakes in the past. That helped make this a little bit smoother, and we had a great experience.
That is great to know. And you're right. It's just having the strategy, having the plan in place before you pull the lever. Our time is almost up. I can't believe how quickly we can get through 20 minutes. So I wanted to end really with the sort of trends, the relevant trends that you're seeing. You sit atop all of this data. You sit atop all of these different organizations who are working now remotely. And this software as a service is just the power behind the cloud and vice versa. What are the relevant trends that you see that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I think what we've experienced over the last year is really an acceleration, Mark, of things that were already occurring. So movement to the cloud adoption was already increasing at a pretty market rate. I think you will also see the increase in artificial intelligence, frankly, used in communications. I think that's something that is a next wave that we will see over the next 2 to 3 years. You're already seeing it in the call center space, but I think you'll see it more and more in meetings and in online events and in education, where artificial intelligence is being used to translate the content, to present additional content to make the conversation richer. I think that's something we will definitely see. And then lastly, we're going to learn a lot from this next 12 months as people go back to the office and or don't go back to the office, and how people use technology. So I think those are the things that are going to occupy my time over the next couple of years.
Bill Wagner, fascinating insight from the world of LogMeIn and from your incredible experience. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and your stories. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Mark.
The Art of the Pivot is brought to you by Signavio.